2019. Welcome back. Are you guys excited to be here? Woohoo! Well, our first guest gave an amazing panel yesterday. If you were here, you know that. If you weren't, you are really in for a treat. Please welcome to the stage, Lindsay Wagner! Come on out, Lindsay. Don't be shy. I think you got one fan over there by the Batmobile. Yeah, you can come on in if you want. First of all, welcome. Thank you again for coming, and thank you for trekking all the way down here to San Antonio. Are you guys excited she's here? Me too.
Well, you know what? This early on a Sunday morning, I'm excited you're here.
I'm
surprised anybody's here.
These are like the marathon runners of the con. Like, they get up, they've had coffee, Gatorade, all, do more things in the morning before the other 90% of the people at the con. So, yes, give you guys a hand for being here early. I kind of want to, there's so much to talk about with Jamie Summers and the Bionic Woman and everything, but I want to talk about recently you and Lee Majors reunited on a Fuller House episode. And I would like to hear what it was like to work together with him, after all these decades.
Actually, hello, can you hear? Okay. The year before, we did a Hallmark movie together. I don't know if you saw that. How many people saw Eat, Play, Love? Yeah. That was a cute one. That was actually our first reunion.
Okay.
And it was interesting. That one, the Hallmark movie, was where they met. They kind of were adversaries, but then they kind of fell in love, and so on. So it was an interesting because it was this arc of them falling in love again, right?
Right.
And so here we were. It's like, have we done this already? And it was fun. It was interesting, and of course there were a lot of jokes because we were playing older people because we were older people, and Lee, he had old football injuries, so his knees. He's going, we can't walk any faster than this down here. He said it's a good thing this was a Hallmark movie and not a remake.
That is really funny. You guys seem to
but
always.
We did have fun on the other one, the one you just brought up.
On the Fuller House.
Oh yeah, that was fun because we didn't get to do that on screen before.
Right.
Be kind of nasty to each other and.
Right, right. You guys seem to have such like a close relationship. How, even back when the show was first airing and you were guest starring and then you had your, the spinoff, how did you create that bond between you guys?
Well, that's what we're paid to do.
Right.
That in itself. Actors, you just do it, whether you like each other or not. You got to do it. And because the whole point of the kind of work we do is to leave our own thoughts and feelings aside, use them for the character and for the circumstance, but only the ones that are appropriate. We don't, and so falling in love and, the kind of things that you do, or being really angry or disliking someone it's very, what would I say? It's something you have to summon. And it's easy when you care for the person. If it's a person you feel safe with, it's even easier. Whether it's somebody you'd be a friend with or not. There's just some people that have a feeling with them, and you can just kind of know you're not going to be judged, or there's nothing weird going on. Or if there's people that you're uncomfortable with for whatever reason, you just have to say, okay, thank you, Lindsay, you set that aside. It has nothing to do with where we are and what we're doing right now.
Right.
So when we were doing this series, it was so intense. They were such demanding shows because we didn't have second units that went off and did all the stunt stuff, and we had to be there for all the stunts because we had to do the initial jump or whatever, and then then the stunt person would do the fall or the landing, and then we'd have to do the actual landing. So we had to be together all the time. So it made much longer shoots than other shows that didn't have any, they didn't have those kinds of special effects in them.
And action scenes.
And yeah, and so it was just exhausting. So we really didn't have much of a relationship during the time of the series. But when we started doing the remakes, you know, the movies, did anybody see the revisit movies? Yeah. That's when we kind of started developing an actual friendship, because we were all rested. We were coming together to do a movie. It was much slower paced, and that was nice. And then, as time went on, they started releasing the DVDs, which was many years later. And when they had the European release, they sent us to, we had to go to Italy.
You just had to, you know.
And so Lee and his wife and I took my kids. We all went to Italy. And again, this was a totally kind of social hangout, more of a hangout thing. So as time went on, we just got to know each other better and better. And then we did some cons together, and we just have a nice, really nice friendship now. And I absolutely adore his wife. She's just lovely, Faith.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it's nice. Over the years, it's just been this big arc.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned the movies. I'm particularly fond of, I think it was 1989, the one with Sandra Bullock in it. What was she like to work with so early in her career?
Well, she was cute as hell, which she still is. Yeah, no, it was fun. She was very green at the time.
Yeah.
And yet you could just see her natural talent and her instincts. It was more really about her not having totally skilled in camera technique yet, but her actual talent was just so blatant that it was really nice. And it was so shocking to myself and to our director and producer when the studio saw because we were intending to have her be the next incarnation of the Bionic Woman, and the studio ended up saying, yeah, we don't think she can carry a series. We went, are you kidding? It's like, today, I would love to see him and say, so what do you think now?
Yeah.
Could she carry a series? We were just stunned. Argued a lot, but didn't do any good.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's so many stories like that from really, A-list actors where they were passed over or, not picked up, and then things work out eventually. Yeah. You mentioned sort of the bond and creating the bond from an actor's perspective between you and Lee. I know that you teach acting. So what is your approach when you teach? Do you teach acting?
Yes, I have.
Yes.
Yeah, currently not anywhere just now, but
right.
I have done in a couple different places. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
What is sort of your approach when you are giving advice to young artists?
Well, one thing that is kind of different than I think a lot of people teach, I don't know about today because honestly I'm not up with, and things change over years or decades, a lot of decades.
Just say years.
Years. Because it used to be, just learn your lines, and then when you start working on the thing, find your character. I never could do that. That was not an option for me. But I could learn my lines so fast because when I read it, I allow myself to completely submerge in the character when I read the scene or the script. And I allow myself to just be me and have my natural responses. I don't think about being me, I just let myself feel what comes up for me in those circumstances, and then I have learned the arc of the story emotionally. And then when I start working on it, I do the same thing with each scene. And then I start looking at and I back up. To me, I start with a close-up, in other words, I guess, and then I back out to a wide shot in how I approach it. And then when I start, then I go to learn it. And I find that the words come so easily for me because I know where I'm headed all the way down there, and I know where I'm going in this scene because I know where I'm going next. And I know it emotionally. So now the mental part of it just makes sense. You know, the words make sense. And the parts that don't, I realize, okay, that's how that person's different from me. So then I start looking at the history of the character and just get more refined with it.
Right.
And the words just seem to come. So I could learn super fast, like overnight, you know, no big deal.
That's
before.
amazing.
And so I encourage my students, if you learn that other way, I want you to completely forget it. And it really throws them for a while. And we kind of work on that because, and I think there's a lot more genuineness that comes through them. You have to tweak on top of it, or add your accent on top of it, or add your quirks and things that you want that person to have, and the hesitance that maybe you wouldn't have in that circumstances. Those are layers, but your genuine self, your deep honesty will come through. And with those on top of it, and then you can kind of meld yourself with those other things that aren't like you. And I think it's easier to be honest, and they end up really liking it.
Yeah. Of all the characters you've played, what is the character that you would say is most different from Lindsay? And you can think about that a minute, and I'll say, if you guys have a question, come to the mic, and we will get through as many questions as we can. Let's just use the mic in the middle here for now. And does any particular character come to mind?
I'm thinking Callie and Son. Any of you see Callie and Son? Yeah, it was actually, I think it was the first, oh no, it was a 3-hour movie. Actually, that show, well, I don't know about today, but up to that point and for many years after, it was the only show that was on at the same time as the World Series and beat it in the ratings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right? That's what I said.
That's a record.
Yeah, it was a TV movie. And it was about a woman, well, actually it was spanned from 17 to 50 something. And did you see it? Do you know what the movie I'm talking about?
I do know the movie. I haven't seen it in full, but
Yeah.
I do know the movie.
Yeah, it was, so I think I was all of 30 something, 33, 35, and I had to play from 17 to 60, I think 60 something. And it was about a woman who was an unfortunate circumstance as a 17-year-old, got pregnant, gave her baby away. And as she grew up and then ended up marrying into a powerful family, she ended up tracking down and getting her son back. And she'd been so wounded from that experience, or whatever her life was prior to that experience, that she just became an obsessive mother. And ultimately, through their life together, by the time he was in his 30s, the things that she did, he ended up going to prison because of some of the results of what her overbearingness brought about. And now, I imagine all mothers would like to do some of the things that she did, trying to protect your children. But her inability to be compassionate to, say, her daughter-in-law, or wanting him to be happy more than she wanted him to be all that she thought he could be. You know, those kinds of distortions I try to keep in check.
Right.
You know, as a mother, it's really wanting to see who your child is at their nature and help nurture that instead of what you want for them.
Well, yesterday we were talking about sort of like life moments, you know, and being able to transcend difficulty and overcome things. Was becoming a mother one of those life moments that changed your perspective on the world, or how did it affect you as an artist?
It didn't. I mean, it didn't change my life perspective on the world as much as it did on me.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a change of perspective entirely. It was just when you think you know what love is, and you have a child, all of a sudden your child teaches you. You didn't know as much about love as you thought. You know, that's that natural instinct comes in, and it was just an exponential experience of a broader understanding of love and courage. Things that would have made me maybe shrink, all of a sudden, Mama Bear was there. It didn't scare me. You know, it's like maybe afterwards I go, whoa, did I really just do that? But I wouldn't know if I would have been able to do that before, but it's not even a thought in your mind, you know. So that happened. An interesting thing happened with my first son. When I was playing a part, and mostly at that time I had done the series already, and then I was doing TV movies. And when I was doing these different movies and becoming different characters, I wasn't able to completely let go of my characters like over the weekend or at night, you know. I wasn't obsessed like some actors get like completely absorbed and you can't even like talk to them because they aren't even there. Hello, remember me? I'm your friend.
Right.
Know? But there was always this slight preoccupation. And it's tiring when you can't come back to your center. I would be wiped out at the end of a show. And I would have to take like a couple of weeks and just go reconnect with myself and rest and just let that split mind relax. And because it takes a lot of energy, just that alone. And it's not something that I was doing on purpose.
Right.
I tried. I even asked help from different people, different, you know, sources, not just people in the industry, but a psychologist and everything, trying to figure out how can I get more relaxed until this show is over? I mean, in amongst the show. Well, I learned about that in me when I had my first son, because I was nursing.
Right.
And that was my commitment. My commitment was first to my son. When I had my first child, I realized that my priority was him, and that I wanted to nurse my child, and that he was going to self-regulate. And so I told my agent, he said, well, where are you going to think you're going to be working? I said, well, I don't know, maybe nowhere, but maybe Whole Foods. And
well, and I imagine that, you know, they didn't have the supplies to facilitate nursing when you weren't with the child that they do today, the pumping and all that stuff. So
well, yeah, they had some crude versions of that.
Right.
But that isn't what I want. You know, I didn't want that either.
Right.
And I realized that this was so strong in me that I was literally willing to give up my career.
Yeah.
And when you get your priorities straight, this is what I've found in life, when you really know what's most important to you and you step out in faith in that and say, okay, I'm going to act on this. I'm going to have this be, and I'm willing to see where it takes me. And if it doesn't take me where I'm hoping it takes me, then I'm okay with that, because I know I'm being true to myself. And I found that to be so empowering in that I felt relaxed about it, as opposed to, worrying about where it's going to go, because I was really in tune with myself and my true principles, right? I ended up working more in the next 18 months than I had in the previous 2 years.
Wow.
And I met people that were nicer than I'd ever met in the business. And they were, sure, bring the baby, whatever. You know, because we nurses every 2 hours. You could have set your clock by my first child. And so that was amazing to me. And really, again, another lesson he taught me was that when you stay true to yourself, you're going to end up wherever you belong. And honestly, had it been the health food store part-time, I would have been okay with that. Wouldn't probably have been as much fun, but it deepened my faith in staying true to yourself, that experience with him.
That's amazing.
And yeah, the people loved it. Even the crew, they'd go, you know, it's so cool. This baby just brings a whole other energy to the set. It's kind of nice. And of course, he was a really good baby.
Right.
And he was very regular, and that made it easier because when he was ready to eat, everybody was kind of expecting it because it was 2 hours now. She's going to disappear for 15, 20 minutes, and she'll be right back. And
I love that story.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Hi, did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question about the paparazzi and how it's changed over the years, and what your impression of that news media coverage of you is, and if they say always the truth or not.
I don't know. You know, honestly, I've been out of the business for about a little over 15 years more now. And I'm just kind of starting to come back in.
You just keep getting called because people are fans of yours, you know? I mean, really.
Yeah, when I decided a few years to kind of come back. So I wish I could answer your question, but I honestly don't understand what's going on out there right now because I haven't really been in situations where I had to deal with it.
So
I don't hang out, you know, in LA. I don't, you know, go to a lot of places where I guess people would be hounding you, and I don't have a constant ongoing series anymore. There's a lot of people out there for them to chase now and that are really, really in the hot spot.
Okay.
Did you have a particular area of the paparazzi in mind, or what were you kind of thinking?
No, I was just wondering how the news media has changed over the years in the coverage of the stars. And just your viewpoints on which you already said.
Well, if just seeing some stuff on TV, I don't think it's any different than the way the news media has been changing, period. You know, I mean, seems to me these days that everything's meaner, more catty, you know, nobody's looking for the good in the people, except maybe Ellen DeGeneres. She looks for the good in people.
Okay, thank you.
So that's kind of unfortunate, I think.
Thank you. Are you active on social media? I know you do have some accounts. Are you a fan?
Okay, those are different questions.
Are you a fan of social media? We can start there.
It's like everything else. It's like when television came out. I mean, for those of you who are anywhere near my age, you remember that television, it was just starting when we were children. It was like, it's weird to think about that. I mean, who under the age of 65 really has that awareness of how new it is? And I went into it because I felt it was such an opportunity for communication, for global communication, for, you know, doing things that could help lots of people if you do the right stories or do the right news coverage or whatever. It could be a wonderful communication, bringing people together kind of thing. And as time went on, it just became all about money and business and corporate sponsors. And of course you need that to even make it work. But then it just, I think, got usurped by the political business, and it became more about money than communication. And the same thing in a slightly different way, but it's like anything we invent, anything we humans make, can go towards making things better or can go towards making more money for me, which always kind of corrodes the potential that it has to be a gift to everyone that encounters it, as well as make money for you. Somehow we kind of like get tunnel visioned on ourselves because the potential's there.
Right.
And so whether that's just wanting my opinion out there, which really is, you know, if people were to use it in a positive way, it could be so wonderful. It's not the medium. It's our meaning humanity's consciousness put through it that's going to say whether it's a good or a bad thing. It's just such a wonderful opportunity, but
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on about this for days. I don't want to get too specific, but
Well, let's go back to.
it becomes hurtful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It can be.
can be a negative force.
Yeah.
But it can also be a beautiful force.
Yeah, and a way to unite people who physically can't be together.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I think, a callback to what you were saying with television when it first, arrived on the scene. Let's go back to the Bionic Woman for a minute, and I just want to ask kind of a silly question. What was the most difficult, or maybe the stunt that stands out most in your mind from your 58 episodes?
Well, it wasn't supposed to be a stunt.
Oh, it always starts like this, huh?
I think it was was that Kill Oscar? Anyway, the one in Las Vegas, I think, with the fembots and all that. There was a helicopter scene where Jamie was running after somebody, or they were running after her, and she was trying to get away, and she jumps up and catches the skid of a helicopter to get away, and that helicopter flies her around Las Vegas, and she's hanging on and eventually gets up in there and saves the day or whatever it was. I honestly can't remember. But it was late afternoon. My stunt girl had already been rigged up with cables and everything. They had done the shot where she was hanging on but cabled, and flew her around the city, tried to jiggle her off, couldn't do it, and then come back, make the safe landing, get her cables off, and the whole thing. Well, by the time they finally got to doing the close-ups of me hanging, the shots where you could tell it was me, it was late afternoon, and we were losing the sun. I don't know if you all know what that means. I know you know what that means. You start shooting outside when the sun starts going down, and you haven't got everything shot that you need to get during that day. It becomes panic on the set.
Total
We're
panic sets
losing
in.
the sun. So hurry, hurry, hurry. So they just wanted to get one good shot of me hanging from the skid, and then I was just to drop off and down into this airbag. We were filming on the top of this new hotel. I think it was the Maxim Hotel. And nobody was thinking about the fact that in Las Vegas in the afternoon, the wind comes up there. And it hits the side of the building. And of course, when it hits the side of the building, it has to go somewhere. So it does that, and it curls across the top. And there's huge, gales of wind just coming across the top of this thing. And everybody's, hurry up, we got to get this close up of Lindsay. They've got an airbag set up for me to drop off into. And I said, okay, where are the cables? And they go, well, we don't have time for that. I was like, excuse me? They said, we don't have time for that right now. But we're just going to take you 4 feet off the airbag. And, you've done one-story drops that are much longer than this. And it's like, and so anyway, they took me up. I finally said, okay, got a hold of the skid. It went up, but they didn't realize, because they hadn't had the helicopter in the air for about 2 or 3 hours. And the winds, we knew we were working in winds. Nobody said anything. So we took off, and I was holding on, and the helicopter all of a sudden was doing this, because he couldn't stay over the airbag. So now they got the shot, and they're going, got it. It's like, okay. But I'm watching the airbag. I'm going like this, watching the airbag disappear from underneath me. And eventually the helicopter had to go up not 4 feet, but 10, 15 feet now off the airbag, and because there was less wind the higher he went, and was still trying to. Well, he was up so high, and that bag was getting smaller, and I finally he's screaming, go, because he had a spot. He's going, go, and I'm going, and my hands wouldn't let go.
Oh my!
It was like they belonged to somebody else. And at one point I ended up, and I'm swearing at my hands as if it was, and the guy kept saying, go, 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 and it's still going like this. And eventually, I don't know what I did. I ended up letting go. I hit the corner of the airbag and gently rolled onto the ground. And everybody was laughing. And I thought, what on earth are they laughing about? I mean, I could have died, And my mother happened to be there that day. Can you imagine watching your kid go?
Oh, like on a helicopter.
You
just
mothers out there, fathers. Yeah. So I just looked at her because I was just about to break down. I mean, I was. You know how you live through a crisis, or if your car spins out, and then after it's over, that's when you break down and you cry or whatever. So I looked at her and I said, "Get me out of here." And so she took me into the stairwell that goes down into the hotel, and I just had a catharsis, and okay, now you're okay. And finally, when I stopped crying, I said, "What was everybody laughing about?" And she said, "Well, it was pretty funny what you did." And I said, "Well, what did I do?" And she said, "Well, when you held your nose."
What?
And I said, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, you held your nose. Oh, and you put your hand up like you used to do when you went off the high diving board when you were 7. We used to try to teach you, how to dive off the high diving board." And she said you'd get perfect form, everything going, and the very last minute you'd go like that. And she said, and I said, "Oh my God, I went abreactive. I became 7 years old again and went like dropping like that." And I said, "So that's what they saw. That's why they were laughing." And she said, "Yeah." Like, all right. So when we went back out, they used to call me boss, my crew. I come out and they're going, "Hey, boss, always in there with, making everything happy." No problem. Got to keep you guys laughing. Took full credit for doing it on purpose.
Oh
And
my gosh.
Nobody ever knew except me and my mom.
That is the most
And now you.
amazing story. So, did someone have a question? Hi. Feel free to stand up. Yeah, hi.
Hello. I used to be 9 years old, and I'm the biggest fan of you. And I remember they were filming you by my park where I used to live in California, playing tennis. I got to watch Lindsay Wagner being filmed as a Bionic Woman.
Oh, you watched us film?
Yeah, I was watching you guys filming
Oh.
the episode where you were playing tennis.
Oh my
back
gosh.
then. Yeah.
Was that in Ojai?
Huh?
Was that in Ojai or Los Angeles?
Los Angeles.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because there was a couple different scenes, I guess we
Yeah,
had.
there was one in Ojai as
Yeah.
well, too.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah, you're my biggest fan.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We were talking yesterday about, people or things that inspired you to become an artist, but I'm wondering if when you were growing up there was a specific movie that you saw that was kind of made you just fall in love with the art of filmmaking or television or anything like that. I know for me it was like Goonies,
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting. No, it wasn't that. Well, as I was telling you yesterday, I didn't start wanting to be in acting. I kind of started learning to act through kind of covert therapy. So an actor friend that I used to babysit for their family brought me into his acting class and encouraged me to do something like that because I was working all the time trying to help my family or going to school. And so he wanted me to do something creative. And so I was taking acting in his class. And that's where the interest came. It didn't come from watching it. I didn't hardly watch television because it was really kind of new, and I just, and so movies, we would go to movies all the time. One of the movies, Anne Bancroft did a movie years ago when I was young, and I remember being impressed by her and that performance, that character that she brought, but it wasn't what made me want to go into acting. It was not even a thought in my mind. I think if there was another calling that I had as a kid, it was I wanted to be a psychologist. But I was very dyslexic and I couldn't get through college. And so acting was, being a giant star was my fallback.
Right. I mean, it kind of worked out, I mean, I like that Plan B happened and worked out.
Yeah.
When you approached, when you found out the story of Jamie, that she was going to turn and have, the bionic pieces and then, be brought back to life as the Bionic Woman. How did you go about differentiating the character there from the original Jamie? With Bionic in her, what changed her, do you think, having those experiences? Because you definitely...
Are you talking about the internal process of being Jamie, the tennis player, and then what did I go through?
Right.
As
because as someone watching the show, you can see that there's a clear difference, you know, between the Jamies, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, that's what one of the things that we kind of worked on was I really wanted to keep it that this was a person. This was the girl next door who happened to be a tennis pro. And to not write her as a superhero or heroine, however you say it, this is a person who now had to learn about herself and find how this is going to impact her emotionally, mentally, and because she had this extraordinary power, how she was going to grow in integrity and what she would do with it. So all of those things it was kind of a collaboration with the writers as the series went on. I don't want to do that story about a superhero. She just is this de facto evolution that. So that was how it was. So it came through stories, and so it was a collaboration with the writers. The initial trauma and realization that she wasn't going to live out her dream of being a tennis pro, and then has these parts, was something that I always played inside. It's what I spoke with various people who were amputees and the emotional thing that they would go through, and tried to work with that without making the show too heavy, because obviously it was a kid and family show. Still making that real, and yet choosing, as she did in my mind, as a tennis pro who was getting more and more successful, to not let the past bother you, to not let your losses get to you. Just know that that's a learning experience. And now here we are today having the opportunity to do something as good or even better, you know.
Right.
And so taking that same attitude that an athlete has to have to excel and applying that to her life circumstance is a lot of what I did. Has anybody seen the movie? Oh, what's the name of it? I just saw it. It's wonderful. Oh, heck. It's about a young football player who was erroneously accused of raping a girl in high school.
Is it in the theaters now?
Well, yes, or just it was, or it is.
Okay.
It's so good. It tells that story so beautifully, and eventually the Justice League, where it was able to prove that it was not, but the way he went through that experience, he called on his training and one of his mentors as an athlete, and one of the mentors that he found in jail, actually, when he was there in prison for a while. It's a beautiful story about learning who you want to be, and the fact that no matter what your circumstance is, you can choose to be a better and a higher version of yourself. And that's basically, what I was doing then with Jamie.
With Jamie, yeah, that's great. Hi.
Sorry, my voice is kind of going in and out. I'm a huge fan, and I think I just wanted to not ask a question, but tell you that I appreciate you telling the story of a mom on Grey's Anatomy with mental illness, because I suffer from mental illness, and it's an important story to tell and let people know that we're not perfect. All parents make mistakes, and especially people with mental illness who kind of take it a little bit harder, and kind of had a stigma. And I just really appreciate you going out there and telling that story. And I know Karev plays a bigger part of that, but you're part of the story and how hard it is for you to accommodate him and still find your own peace. I just wanted to say thank you for telling that story.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And Grey's Anatomy actually was another record-breaking episode you were in, which marked, I think it was the episode that marked the show as the longest-running medical drama. So that was kind of a cool thing. You were great on that show too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Prime time medical drama.
Right.
I think there's General Hospital is a
True.
Yeah, but as far as prime time shows, it definitely episode 15.
That's amazing.
Season 15, episode 15. Yeah.
What do you, now that you're sort of by your fans getting back into the business, because like we discussed with Warehouse 13 and Fuller House, people are just calling you and saying, come on in, Lindsay, let's get you on the show. What kind of roles are you looking for future projects for yourself?
I would like the opportunity to do some comedy. You know, I'm not broad comedy. It's not my thing. As a matter of fact, doing the Fuller House, which is pretty broad, sticky stuff, you know, it was an interesting challenge for me. They kept saying, just bigger, do it bigger, and I was like, how do I do it bigger and still be honest? You know, my whole thing in acting is like honesty.
Right.
It's like, it's okay, do it bigger and bigger, and then I do it, and I think that was silly, and everybody start clapping. You know, it was like, really?
You're like, that's the one?
That was okay. It was really interesting for me. Yeah.
I think that'd be great, and you know, the fun part about a sitcom.
'Cause I can be sarcastic better than I
Yeah.
can be. Well, I don't know. Some people tell me I can be goofy, but
I think I would love to see you in a comedy.
Yeah.
Let's put that out there in the universe.
thanks.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Lindsay. Thank you so much for joining us this Sunday morning and kicking off the Sunday of Celebrity Fan Fest. Did you guys enjoy yourselves?
Thank you.
Please give
Thank
one
you
more
for
big
coming.
round of applause to Lindsay Wagner.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to come back at 11:30 for the main stage for Kevin Sorbo. 11:30 at the main stage for Kevin Sorbo. Thank you.